now is the actor and former addict Mathew Perry, the journalist Peter Hitchens, and Baroness Meacher, who chairs the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group on Drug Policy Reform. Why do you have such faith in drug courts?
Well, that's kind of an easy question to answer. I see that they work. I see that I've been involved with them for about 4 years, and a little over 4 years, and people that go through drug court have a 55% less chance of seeing handcuffs ever again.
How do you know that these people wouldn't have quit their drug habit anyway?
Well, that gets into a bigger question of whether these people are addicts or not. You know what I mean? If they're drug addicts and alcoholics, then they're going to keep going until something stops them. And drug court is a wonderful way to interrupt that process. And it's a way to not throw these people away. So it takes first-time non-violent drug offenders, and instead of throwing them into prison, it puts them into a 18-month to 2-year program.
What's not to like about it?
Well, the evidence in favour of them is pretty scanty. There haven't been many serious studies. I think one in Baltimore, one in Arizona, and one somewhere else in the United States. And they tend to suggest that over the long term, they don't make much difference anyway. And the selection of the people who go through them, I think, has some impact on it. But the real problem for me is this, that what you're saying is you're effectively seeking to fail in the criminal justice system. The whole point of the criminal justice system, and we forget this all the time, is to deter people from committing crimes. Once you've arrested someone, once they've appeared in court, it has already failed. And to soften the court system, to make it into a kind of jolly where the judge wears tracksuit bottoms and is nice to the offender. Oh, you should see some of the things that have been going on in this country, the West London Drug Court, where the judge, as I said, wore tracksuit bottoms and was macy with the defendants. This gives the impression not of the majesty of justice, but of somebody trying to be nice. Now, actually, it doesn't do anybody any favours to try and be nice to drug takers.
There's nothing wrong.
So the problem
there's a great deal wrong with it, because if you want to stop people becoming drug users, then the best thing to do is to make sure they never start in the first place. And an effective deterrent criminal justice system
the point is you're dealing here with people who have started.
Well, yes, because they've started because the criminal justice system is so feeble.
Isn't the real problem?
It's feeble from the start.
Baroness Meacher, you can have a contribution here, come on.
Isn't the problem that by the time you get to a drug court, you've already assumed that drug addiction is a crime? Actually, drug addiction is a health problem. So the first thing you've got to do is some preventive work, prevent people becoming drug addicts, and that we now know there's good evidence that you can do that. Portugal have switched vast sums of money from prisons to treatment. They have vastly more people in treatment than we do here. They have a much better record than Spain and Italy. You can deal with this as a health problem instead of waiting till people become really severe addicts, get into the criminal justice system, and then, okay, I agree with you. Drug courts can be a little more helpful.
Mathew, come on.
I'm not understanding your point. Your point is to stop drugs and alcoholism by just people never starting?
Well, you two believe in this fantasy of addiction in which people lose...
Fantasy of addiction.
A complete fantasy in which people lose all power over themselves and become victims of this terrible, frightening disease.
But right now you're quoting...
Let me finish. This is what you believe, this terrible, frightening disease after which they cannot stop taking drugs. If you really believe that, then you would presumably think the best thing would be that they never, ever came in contact with those drugs.
Of course.
Wouldn't it, therefore, be wise to deter them from doing so by a stern and effective criminal justice system which actually persuaded them it was unwise to take the drugs in the first place?
When do I get to speak? I'm dying to speak.
If you really believe in it, you'd agree with me.
When can I speak?
Speak.
Okay, so...
I didn't come here to be quiet.
Neither did I.
No,
I didn't come here to listen to ludicrous things like that either. So...
Well, you tell me why it's ludicrous if you're so clever.
I will. I will.
Work.
The American Medical Association diagnosed it a disease in 1976, so you're saying that that's incorrect?
Yeah, look, people...
Are you saying that that's
incorrect? The medical
incorrect?
profession is constantly doing extraordinary things. The American Psychiatric Association said for years that homosexuality was a disease.
Peter, the key thing is...
They were wrong. All kinds of things
Peter,
are said by medical professionals.
The key thing is we've had this policy for 50 years. We've had this policy
My life.
of
My life is the objective
treating
evidence.
addiction as a crime. 50 years.
No, we
and we
haven't.
now know that it doesn't work. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. Increasingly in the US, Uruguay, and elsewhere, and in Europe,
Finish your
things
point,
are changing.
My life is, I'm a drug addict. I'm a person that if I have a drink, I can't stop. And so it would be following your ideology that I'm choosing to do that. That I'm choosing.
That's exactly not my ideology, it is my belief. Yes, you do choose.
It is, and
You have a
it's a
choice.
belief that you wrote in your book, correct?
You have a choice over whether you drink or not. You have a choice over.
But your book is the only book in modern times that has this ideology.
Yeah.
So doesn't that teach you something?
Well, it's quite often unfashionable ideas are unfashionable because they are unpopular
Or wrong.
with influential people. Doesn't necessarily bother me. You tell me what the objective diagnosis is to establish the existence of addiction in the human body.
It's an allergy of the body, and it's an.
Allergies of what?
We're supposed to be grown men here, and you're making faces like the guy who's wearing the pants that you were talking about earlier. I'm expecting you to come out in the pants in a minute. It's an obsession of your mind and an allergy of your body. So this is what happens to me. I start thinking about alcohol. I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about it.
And what's the objective physical proof of this inability to stop?
There's considerable proof this is partly a genetic problem, isn't it?
Your argument is that
Partly
it's
genetic.
willpower, Peter.
Of course, it's willpower. People,
No,
all
it's
the
not
people,
willpower.
People
No,
constantly stop both drinking and taking drugs.
You're just a person who's talking who's wrong.
If willpower were not
It's an
involved, then how would that
effort of
happen?
will on your part not to do it now, isn't it?
I'm in control of the first drink, and so I do all these things to protect myself from not having the first drink.
Sure.
But
That
once
has
I
always
have
been the
that
case,
drink, the allergy of the body kicks in. This is all documented alcoholism proof. Then I can't stop after that.
Our problem
Allergies
with
of what?
Peter.
I mean, I'm
is he
allergic
doesn't
to
respect-
aspirin, but it doesn't mean I
No,
have
but
to
Peter,
drink.
but you have to look at the evidence, Peter.
That is
Who
it.
What is
led
this?
you?
What is this allergy? It's
an allergy of your body.
It's just
Not that your aspirin point
pseudoscience.
wasn't wasn't genius, but you don't know what you're talking about.
That's right. You've got to look at countries that have done
I
it
do.
differently.
No, you don't.
And that
You
have
can't
succeeded.
come up with. I asked him to come up with an objective,
No, come on.
objective
I
diagnosis
did.
of the presence
Myself.
of this force in his body.
We're not
That's
getting
not an
anywhere.
objective diagnosis. Yourself is the reverse of objective.
But he's telling
Myself
us
and
what
10
his-
million other alcoholics and addicts across America and across the world are having these problems.
But people have problems with drugs and drink. People like taking them and they don't want to stop taking them. But it doesn't mean they have a disease that needs to be treated.
So the American Medical Association is wrong in your opinion.
If the American Association says it's a disease, yes, of course they're wrong. There is
So
an
all
immense
these doctors
fashion
are
at the
wrong.
moment.
But you're right.
There's an immense fashion at the moment.
But you're right.
There's immense fashion at the moment for simply dismissing the ability of people to take control over their own lives and to make excuses for them. We have, far from 50 years, been treating alleged addiction as a disease, as a crime. We've been treating it as a disease, and the result is we have many, many more drug users than we did when this policy started.
The medical evidence shows that addiction is in part a genetic problem and in part an environmental one. If you've got parents with an addiction, if you then have abuse, sexual abuse, child abuse, you'll be brought up in a children's home, lots of foster parents, you've got this genetic problem anyway. The evidence is very, very clear. You have a health problem. And countries that have addressed this and dealt with it as a health problem are doing a lot better than we are. We can save money, we can reduce crime, we can get people better, stop having them on benefits, we can have them paying taxes. If we want to save money and help people, then we know how to do it.
Since we've followed your policies, more and more people have been taking dangerous and damaging drugs.
Sadly,
You are
we don't
making-
follow-
Since we've ceased treating drug possession as a crime and have more or less ceased either arresting or prosecuting people possessing drugs. Since we have classified drug takers as people with a medical problem, we have had more and more of all of
Matthew,
them.
let me ask
Can
you
that
this, which
possibly
is-
be right?
Can I
Which is
just
slightly
can I
related-
just give him one quick put down?
If you want to, you go ahead.
You're
yeah.
making a point that is as ludicrous as saying that Peter Pan was real.
Well, you keep saying that, but you cannot come up with an objective definition of the thing which...
I was going to introduce an argument that's maybe useful to you, Peter, which is this, that isn't the point about drug courts that people have to be compelled to get clean? And that in itself tells you something.
Yes.
They don't have to be compelled.
Well, they have to be compelled. You have to have
Well,
the
if
will.
you opt to do it-
You have to have the
No.
willingness to change.
Yes.
Drug courts don't do much better than voluntary treatment. Drug
Yeah.
courts do fairly much the same.
That's not true either. It's not as crazy as what he's saying, but it's not true either.
Well, there is research evidence to show that you do as well, roughly, with voluntary treatment as you do in drug courts. But actually,
But they've got to want to do it.
they have, and to be well enough to do it,
And
to
that is an
reach
act
a
of
stage,
will.
But they've got to have reached a stage, have sufficient support, sufficient treatment. No, this is very complicated.
And they
It's
have
not
to be
just a
cleaned
simple,
up.
simple
They have
thing.
to be
It's just
sober.
willpower. It's much more complicated.
They have to be
than that.
sober to make that decision. They can't
Yeah.
be. They
Yeah.
can't be intoxicated to make that
How is
decision.
it that people ever cease to be addicts if what you say is true?
Well, Santa.
Yeah, it's terribly clever, but this is a very serious subject, and you treat it with immense levity.
No,
How is it that if what you say,
you're the one
what
that's
you
treating
say,
it
the
with
policy
levity.
which you so smugly and loftily advocate, this policy which has led to disaster in Western countries for decades. How is it that if what you say
How
is
has the
true,
policy led to disaster?
how is it that people, because it has led to a laxness in the law, which has meant many more people taking the terrible risk of taking the drugs which you say are addictive and we all agree are damaging?
That is simply not true, and we know it, and the research shows it.
Yeah.
Quite simple. All you've got to do, Peter, is a bit of reading of the evidence, and you will
Read
find
something other than your
Yeah.
book.
Okay, all right, that's enough. Thank you.
He cannot argue seriously.